Hey, my name is Petra Cruz, and I'm obsessed with all things birth, but especially VBAC. I am a birth doula and mom who had a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. In this podcast, we dive deep into the inspirational world of vaginal birth after cesarean. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring VBAC stories, practical tips from professionals who've championed the VBAC cause, as well as my personal journey and how it might help you on yours. From mindset shifts to evidence-based practices, you'll leave each episode feeling inspired and informed. Get ready to soak in the wisdom, embrace the strength within, and join this incredible VBAC community. This is the VBAC Junkie Podcast. Today, I am joined by Sarah, also known as Blissful Encapsulation. She is incredible. She is a mom of 3 plus 2 stepchildren. She is a placenta encapsulation specialist in Fresno with a passion of offering support to other moms in their postpartum journey. She also had an incredible VBAC after 2 C-sections in the hospital, and it was such an honor because I was able to witness it because I was her doula. So I'm going to let her kind of dig into that birth story because, oh my gosh, it was an incredible one. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, so we knew each other, little backstory. We met each other because Sarah reached out to me on like a Facebook group, I want to say it was, like a VBAC Facebook
It,
group.
might, it was like a couple years ago, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
it was a couple
remember.
years ago now. But it was after I had Luke, who's my VBAC after 3 C-sections baby, and she wanted to know more about my story, and we found out we only lived like an hour and a half away from each other. And then the doula training program I did, she also did. So there's so many things that like intertwined our lives, and we became friends, and I became her doula. I mean, it's been such an incredible journey and such an honor to get to know you and like be at your birth. Like, oh my gosh, so
I
amazing.
know.
So,
I was so grateful you were able to be at my birth, and I felt so bad because I was like, it's an hour and a half drive, and you're like, no, no worries, like it's fine.
yes, it was awesome. So, go ahead and start wherever you want to start. We can either start on your C-sections or we can jump right into your story, whatever you want to do.
Okay, so I had my first C-section when I was 24, and I just went into that birth like no education whatsoever. I was just like, we'll see what happens, you know? And the first sign of a contraction, I was like, it's go time. Let's go to the hospital. and like woke up my husband and was like, okay, let's go. I'm ready to go. Got there, I was like 1 centimeter dilated or something, but they were like, okay, you're like 41 weeks. Let's go ahead and admit you. So I labored there for about 20 hours. I had horrible back labor. I had no idea how to even navigate anything I was going through because I was just like, it's fine. I'll get through it. No big deal.
Yep.
Um, so after about 12 hours, I finally got the epidural. Took the best nap of my life. I just wasn't progressing as fast as they had wanted me to progress. They were saying something about my baby's heart rate, like they just weren't comfortable with it. The nurses said, let me go ask the doctor if I can give you Pitocin. And then they came back like 10 minutes later and they're like, we're going to do the C-section. Um, we're not comfortable with baby's heart rate. It's a danger to your baby's life, and kind of like scared us into it. And so we're like, okay, sure, yeah, let's do it. So I did the C-section, and I had, I mean, just the hardest recovery. I had no idea how hard a recovery was from the C-section because it's just so normalized. Everybody I knew at the time who had given birth recently had a C-section. And so I just had a really rough recovery. And I was like, okay, next time I have a baby, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to have a baby back. However, I, again, did not educate myself very much into a feedback. I was just like, it's going to be different this time, and didn't really put a lot of education into my next birth experience. So I had the same doctor I had the first time around, and they gave me until 41 weeks to go into labor before they were just going to do a C-section. And I feel like the thing that kind of threw me off with that one was around 30 weeks, maybe even sooner, they said, let's just schedule your C-section just in case. And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. But leading up to like 36 weeks on, I just had it in my mind, like, I have to go into labor. I was so stressed out. I had this deadline. I had to go into labor by this date. And I actually had a lot of prodromal labor from 36 weeks on. I had so much prodromal labor. So every time I would start feeling contractions, I was like doing all the things, taking walks, like doing hip circles on the birth ball, like whatever I could do. But it was very stressful. Like I put a lot of stress on myself. And I kind of feel like that's kind of why I didn't go into labor by 41 weeks. I went in for my C-section at 41 weeks with contractions as well. I was going into my C-section with contractions, but I was just like, well, I'm here. So I had the C-section. That was supposed to be our last baby, but then we decided a few years later, like, no, let's do this again. Let's have another baby.
Yay!
I know. This time, though, after my last baby, I decided I wanted to look into birth a lot more. I like read books, I watched birth videos, I took a doula course online. That wasn't the one that I had done the same as you. The
Oh,
Academy, I had done another one. So I learned so much more about birth this time around. So going into this pregnancy, I was like, I'm gonna have a VBAC. And also I had been talking to you for like a year.
yeah.
I was like, I'm doing this. Your story was so inspiring to me. So I was like, I'm doing this. I am having my VBAC this time. I am not going through another C-section. So we had talked about it. We were kind of going back and forth, me and you. I was tossing ideas around, like trying to find a VBAC supportive doctor, looking through different hospitals, deciding on whether or not I even wanted to have the epidural or not. I finally landed on a home birth. I wanted to have a home birth. I felt like if I was going to have a VBAC, my best chance at that was going to be at home, where everybody around me would be supportive of my decision. I was most comfortable at my home. I remember during my first birth, the entire time I was just thinking, I just want to leave and go home. Like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't have a great experience with the nurses during my first labor. So I decided I wanted a home birth. So I hired a midwife. I think I tossed the idea out to you to be my doula as a joke, and you were like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, really? So
Yes.
excited. And so then I had you as my doula. Surprisingly, my husband was very supportive of it. I was extremely shocked by that because I know a lot of partners are like very iffy about like home births. He was also wasn't exactly sure what a doula does, but he was like, if that's going to help you get to what you want to do, like let's have her, you know. So you came and met with us, and he was like, yep, I love her, you know, I'm so excited about this. So I felt like so prepared this time around. um Again, I had so much prodromal labor from 36 weeks on, so much prodromal labor. I remember losing my mucus plug around like 36 weeks, or part of it at least. I think the thing, and you and I were talking a lot throughout this time too, so I think the thing I was really trying to do this time around was not put a lot of emphasis on my early labor signs. I didn't want to put a lot of stress on it this time. I was like, it's going to happen whenever it happens. My body knows what it's doing. I'm just going to trust that. And so although there was times of weakness where I would Google like early labor symptoms, and I would be like, it's happening, it's
Of
happening.
course.
And then I would have to like bring myself back down and be like, nope, just wait, like just wait. It's gonna happen whenever your body's ready for it to happen. Um, so the weekend I went into labor because it was a long time. It was a Friday morning. I started having contractions that they weren't very consistent, but they were more intense than I had experienced before. Um, but I was just trying to ignore it as much as possible because like nothing was happening with them. So all day Friday, I was having contractions. I did not sleep Friday night because my contractions kept me up, but they weren't consistent. Like I would have contractions like 2 minutes apart, and then I would have contractions like an hour apart. So either way, I didn't sleep. They were very intense. They were very uncomfortable. All day Saturday, again, I was having contractions on and off, and I was like, man, they're more intense than I have experienced before, but they're just not getting into a pattern. Um, then Sunday night, I had my bloody show, so I was like, yes, it's happening. It's gonna happen today. Um, and then all day Sunday, again, it was just like super strong contractions. I would have to stop and breathe through them, and they just weren't getting into a pattern. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna do my hip circles on the ball, I'm gonna do all the things you're supposed to do to go into labor. You luckily had driven to Fresno the hour and a
Mhm.
half, and you were like, I'll just wait at a relative's house. Um, and it wasn't happening. So I like text my midwife and I was like, I don't know what this is because like I've been having super intense contractions since like Friday. They're not getting into a pattern. And she was like, okay, take a Benadryl and go to sleep. And she's like, stop timing your contractions and just go to sleep. I didn't have Benadryl, but I lay down in bed and tried to go to sleep. And literally, right when my body started to relax, like once I lay down in bed, they got into a pattern. And I'm like, that's probably what I should have been doing all day. It's just relaxing and not stressing myself out. Um, they immediately went to like 4 minutes apart. My husband had been working all day. I told him, go to work. It's fine. Like my last labor was 20 hours and I only got to 6 centimeters. So I'm sure you'll be fine to go to work today.
Mhm.
So I when he got home that night, I was like, just go to sleep. I'll let you know if something happens. So he went to sleep with my contractions 4 minutes apart. And I was texting you this whole time. And you're like, I can head over if you want. So I was like, okay, sure. Like, yeah, keep me company. Luckily, looking back, I was so glad you came over early, even though like it was fine. I could handle them early on, but they started to get a little more intense. And having you there to keep me company, joke around with me between contractions, do your amazing hip squeezes on points. I did not feel like I was in pain for all that long because my early labor with you there was just fun. I was having a good time. I don't know about anybody else.
I mean, it was so chill to me. We were just in your house and it was nice and dark. And then once I had like the little tea lights put around, it was like a very like serene mood to me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a good time. We were talking between contractions. It was funny to me because we would just stop like mid-sentence and I would just like go through my contraction and then we'd be like, just carry on like nothing happened.
Yep.
Um, so that was a lot of fun. And then I asked my midwife, or I told her I was in labor, sent her my contraction timer thing, a picture of it. I think we'd asked her to come over after a couple hours. My biggest fear, I was like, I don't want her to come check me and I'm gonna be at like a 2 because then that's gonna like just throw me off. Um, so I waited a couple hours, I think after a few hours, we then like woke up my husband, told him, yeah, it's like it's happening.
Mhm.
So I remember we like jumped in the shower for a little bit. I think that's when my midwife got there. She just checked me. She was like, oh yeah, baby sounds great. Like you know, I'll be downstairs. Let me know if you need anything. So we were like up in my room, just going through contractions. And it was just so like such a huge difference compared to my labor with my first baby. Like it was like, yes, they were intense. Yes, I was having to like moan through them, but it was just so peaceful and it was just so calm. Like the environment was so calm. Um, and it was just, I mean, I don't even remember really being in pain. Like I just remember like how peaceful it felt the whole time. So it was just like such a difference, like night and day pretty much from being in the hospital.
Oh yeah.
So I think after a little while, I wanted to get into the tub. My midwife was like, "Oh yeah, let me check you before you get in the tub." At that time, maybe I had been laboring for about 4 or 5 hours by that time, and I was 4 centimeters. I'm not gonna lie to you. During that time, I was like, "Oh my God, I can't do this." Like I'm only at 4 centimeters. It's been like, well, for me, it felt like it had been days because it kind of had been days. Um, but I was still in like a good headspace to where I was like able to say, you know what, like I could literally go from 4 to 10 in a matter of like an hour. Like early labor is the longest time. So I kind of just like talked myself back into like a positive headspace.
Right.
Because yeah, I was like, oh my God, I'm only a 4. Like that sucks.
Yeah, and honestly, I could see at first there was like a slight like disappointment. I could tell by your like body language. And then I did notice you like kind of came back into yourself and then you were able to just like flow through the contractions after that.
Yes, I definitely had to talk myself through that one because it was a little bit of a disappointment. I was like, no way. Like I have been laboring for like ever, it felt like. Since Friday, it felt like. And this was early Monday morning.
Yeah, and that prodromal labor is no joke. Like I remember I did the same thing from Friday until Monday. I was having those contractions on and off, and it's exhausting.
Oh my God, I know. It was so exhausting. I did not sleep all of Friday. I think I like was surviving off of cat naps from like Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. I didn't sleep because I was in labor.
Hmm.
So yeah, but once I got into the tub, you guys set me up to where I was like, I had my pillow behind me. You had gotten me a cup of water with a little swirly straw.
Yes. It was the only one I could find. And then I saw you had like a whole pack of straws later on. I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm like, this is cute. You're like, I couldn't find anything else.
Oh man.
So funny. But I was, yeah, you guys had set me up in the tub. I like was literally falling asleep between contractions. Like it was the best. It was the most relaxing. My midwife came in a couple more times to just check the baby. And again, she was just so like calm about it, like just, checked, okay, baby's doing great, like get some rest. We kept the lights low the entire time. You had your little like candles set up around. So I slept through contractions and it was great. I had a good time.
Yeah.
So relaxing. Like I can't imagine being able to peacefully fall asleep between contractions in the hospital. I just, I mean, it was just so relaxing, the whole thing. Um, so then I stayed in the tub for a little bit. I think I crawled into bed. Me and my husband crawled into bed. You went back downstairs and I was just again just in bed sleeping between contractions. I would wake up my husband. He would fall asleep too. He was exhausted.
Yeah.
Wake up my husband for every contraction. Um, and I kept feeling like I think early morning I got back into the tub, but I kept feeling like this urge to push. Like it wasn't like even like, I mean, like my body was just naturally doing it. Like I just was pushing and I was like, I don't think this is right. Like this, I don't think I'm supposed to be pushing already. My midwife had stepped out to get some breakfast and came back and we told her what was going on. And she was like, yeah, just go ahead and push. And so I was pushing through my contractions without me actually doing it. So this was a pretty crazy experience for me because it was like my body was just naturally doing it. Um, Nothing was happening. And so we tried different positions. I think we tried the tub, we tried the what's it called? Like the birth seat
Oh yeah,
thing.
the birth stool.
Yeah, the birth stool. What else? I think we tried on the toilet. We tried, I mean, just different positions. And it was just, I was in so much pain. And she was like, I don't think this is supposed to be that painful. Let me check you again. And so she checked and realized that I had a cervical lip, the small piece of cervix that just would not go away. And so she's like, okay, you might need to labor a little bit longer to get this little cervical lip out of the way. Um, I don't know. Do you remember how long I was pushing for? Because it felt like hours.
It was like off and on. You weren't just like pushing straight. So I don't even remember how long it was because we
This
also like you
was
tried
all there.
walk. Yeah. Well, because then I don't know if you remember, but you tried the stairs too, walking the
I
stairs a
attempted
little
the
bit.
stairs. I remember she told me like, yeah, try the stairs or take a shower or take a nap. And I was like, I'm gonna take a nap. I'm
Hmm.
tired. I just wanted to go to sleep. I was so tired because I had just been like having like living off of cat naps for like days.
Hmm.
I think we tried the stairs. Yeah, we tried walking a little bit. We tried the stairs. I got down like two or three stairs maybe. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yep.
I went back to bed. I know you guys were like, you can try this position. And I was like, I'm so tired. Like I was so exhausted at this point. Um, in my mind, so she had told me I was pretty much already complete. It was just that little piece of cervix. So we were waiting it out. In my mind, I was like, even if I get to the hospital, like even if I decided on the hospital, I don't think they would give me an epidural because I thought they cut you off at like 8 centimeters. They won't give you an epidural after that. So I was just like pushing through as much as possible. Um, After I think it was maybe around noon or 1 o'clock, I was like, I'm done. Like I need to go to the hospital. I was by that time it was like every contraction I was pushing onto this piece of cervix, and it was painful to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember you guys telling me before we had found out about this, like, no, it's supposed to feel good when you push. Like, I'm not sure what's going on. And I was like, yeah, this does not feel good.
Yeah.
Um, so she checked me again after I said I wanted to go to the hospital. And she's like, yeah, your cervix is swollen, so you might, you could go to the hospital at this point. So we somehow miraculously at that point I made my way downstairs.
Yep.
I'm going to the hospital because we had tried the stairs earlier and I made it down 3 steps or whatever, and I was like, nope, I'm done. But I made it down the stairs into the car. um I got to the hospital. My midwife had called ahead of time and told them that I was going. My cervix was swollen. So we got to the hospital. They met me outside with the wheelchair. And I was like, I need an epidural. And they're like, well, we're going to need to like check your blood. We're going to need to like check your cervix. And I'm like, nope, don't touch me. I need an epidural first. Um, and so they wheeled me into the thing. I couldn't even sit on the wheelchair. I was on my knees on this wheelchair. And it was funny that the thought in my mind was, I'm about to make a scene in the lobby of this hospital because I was so loud during my contractions at this point that I was like so embarrassed that I was going to make a scene in the lobby of the hospital. Luckily, I didn't have a contraction during that time. um, but they got me up there. I during my first labor, they were very like they needed to make sure that my monitors were on at all time. I remember it had slipped and they lost the baby's heartbeat. This was during my first labor. And then they were trying to fix it. And I'm like, can you wait till those contractions done? And they're like, nope, we got to check it now. We got to do it now. So at this hospital, I was telling them, wait. They wanted to put a monitor on me. And I said, wait until I get my epidural. I don't want anything touching me till I get my epidural. And they're like, can we just like monitor between contractions? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I was so surprised how sweet these nurses were because they were like, is it okay? Can I put the monitor back on you? And I was like, yeah, that's fine between contractions. During contraction, I was like, take it off. And they took it off right away. And they would ask permission to like put it back on. And so I was so surprised by that because that was not my experience at the previous hospital I labored at. But it was just crazy that I was like grateful for this nurse asking for permission to touch me because that should just be like normal, you know?
Yeah,
It's like kind of common sense.
exactly.
um so I got there, the doctor that was there was like, your midwife called and said you needed a C-section. And the nurse was like, no, her midwife called and said she needed an epidural. She was exhausted and she needed an epidural. So they automatically jumped to a C-section. I was like so surprised by that because I'm like, I'm 10 centimeters already. The baby's like on his way out.
Yeah.
And they brought that up. So the nurses were great. They were so sweet. I got my epidural and I was a whole new woman. Back to normal. That I think that's when you had gotten there. You had met us at the hospital after I gotten, or when I was getting my epidural.
Yeah.
Um, and after that, they checked me and they're like, yeah, you're 10 centimeters. And where was the baby at? Um,
He was like right there.
yeah, he
I
was
don't,
like, I don't remember. Yeah, he was right there. So they're like, okay, you can try and start pushing. Um, Pretty much everybody else left except for this one nurse, and she was so great. She like, was she brought out like the squat bar. She was like letting us do, which is funny, like letting us do different positions, but
I
like
know.
you had, asked for the peanut ball to try that. So we were doing different positions. Which again was weird because I remember my first epidural and I couldn't even move my legs. I was very surprised I was even moving around after I had gotten the epidural, but
Yeah, you were super mobile. And I think it just depends like on how dense it is. Because with some people, it's so dense they can't feel anything. And like you were like able to like move and stuff. So that was
I
awesome.
know it was really weird. I was like, I did not expect this after getting the epidural because I was like trying to so many different positions.
Hmm.
I don't remember how long I was pushing for after the epidural,
Not
but I
long at all.
tell you, it was so different because I have experience now pushing without the epidural and pushing with the epidural. And it was just such a different experience. Like without the epidural, it was like my body was just doing it. Like I wasn't doing anything and my body was just doing it for me pretty much. And this time, I mean, I don't even know how to explain what it feels like to push with an epidural, but it was just a weird experience. Like weirder than pushing without it for sure. It was definitely weird. Um, I don't remember who it was, either you or my husband that asked for the mirror.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I asked him to bring
get
it
the
out.
mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they brought the mirror in, and that was the coolest freaking experience. I was so excited about that. I loved the mirror. Although I thought it was going to be like a little handheld mirror, and it was like this massive mirror, and I was like,
Yes.
oh, I was like, I did not know we were going to see this big. Um, but I loved that experience. I loved seeing his head start to come out. I was able to feel his head as it was coming out. And it was just so special. Like I was just in such a good place at this time. Um, and so even though I feel like I didn't get my home birth, it was like my decision, like I kind of had enough. I want to go to the hospital. I was in a good place at that time in the hospital. I kind of got what I needed. I made the decision on my terms. No one pushed me one way or the other. You guys were like, whatever you want to do. So that I had such a great experience this time. He was born, the cutest little guy of all time.
Hmm.
I don't know why I had the strongest urge to smell his head. I was like, I need to smell this baby.
Yes.
Like, I need to smell him. The best little newborn smell of all time.
Hmm.
But it was just, oh my gosh, like I was on cloud nine after this birth experience. Like this is the first birth experience I had where I didn't have like baby blues afterwards. I was just so happy afterwards the whole time. Like for weeks, I was just like, oh my God, that was so amazing. Um, and then you were just, oh my God, you were so great. I swear to you, my midwife, my mom, who was not very happy with the experience, but my mom, My midwife, my mom, my husband, the nurses, they were like, "Oh my God, your doula was amazing." I was like, "I know." It
Oh,
was great.
so sweet.
It was, I mean, just so great. You were so supportive the whole time. Um, and like I said, your hip squeezes were on point.
I mean, you know what? Just like after everything's said and done, my only hope is that like you felt supported, you felt heard, you felt like, everything was made on your terms. And like if you felt that way from like my support and everybody else's support around you, like I feel like my job is done, like
And it makes such a difference, like being able to have your birth on your terms, because my goal was a home birth and it didn't end up that way, but the whole thing was still on my terms. And it just made such a difference with how I felt about my whole birth experience, how I felt postpartum in the weeks leading it, after having the baby. I felt like so happy compared to my previous births. So it just makes such a difference having your birth like on your terms. So it was just such like, I mean, such an eye-opening experience for me to just have a birth on my terms, not necessarily go the way I planned, but still like it was such a great experience for me.
yeah. Good. I'm so glad. And like, congratulations because you did amazing. Like, I was so impressed just watching you like own the room wherever we were, like at your house, at the hospital. It was incredible. And just to see everybody supporting you in the best way that felt good to you was so incredible. Like it was so beautiful. So what would you say, or would you say that there was something that you did different this time that you feel like maybe helped you have the VBAC that you were hoping for?
I think, first of all, I was educated this time. Um, I did a lot of research into it. I had talked to you about it. So I was like surrounded by people who had had VBACs. Um, I know when I was getting my NSTs at 40 weeks, my amniotic fluid was low, and that doctor was like, "You need to get induced right now." And I was like, I don't think so. I'm gonna go home, hydrate." Not medical advice for anybody listening. This is what I did. This is what I chose. So I chose not to get induced because I had already been like educated on that. And the biggest thing for me was to not stress, like not put any pressure on when the baby was going to come, although that was very difficult towards the end. But I always try to bring myself back to like not stress about it, which shows because when I was trying to go into labor that night, nothing was happening. And the minute my midwife was like, just relax, go to sleep, I went into labor.
Yeah.
Things progressed the second I relaxed. So that just goes to show like how big that is, because so many women are like trying to do things to go into labor, do, all the exercises, like stressing about that.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing you do is just relax and just wait for it to happen because it's going to happen. You're not going to be pregnant forever. And you kept telling me that too. You're like, this baby's going to come out at some point.
Yep. So I know we didn't like really talk about it, but you had dual care, right? With an OB and your midwife.
Yeah, I did. I had my midwife I had hired just to attend my birth. So I had met with her a couple of times. We had a couple of prenatal appointments. Um, but the rest of the time I was doing OB care. And what was really crazy about it was like the nurses, every single appointment, when I told them I was going to have a VBAC, they were like scaring me, like, oh, you're putting your life at risk, you're putting your baby's life at risk. And again, because I was educated about it and the risks, I was like, okay, like, didn't really pay much attention to what they were saying and just went along my way. But also the doctor, I hadn't met with the doctor until 40 weeks. And when I had told him I was going to have a VBAC after 2 C-sections, he was like, okay, sure. He's like, I'm not going to pressure you into anything. I'm not going to like schedule you for anything because this was so normal back in the day. Just like for whatever reason, the newer doctors are scared of it and it's like not that big of a deal. Like this was normal to have a VBAC after even 3 C-sections. So he was totally cool about it, which I was like, thank God, because if I ended up in the hospital, at least I have, you know, I have his support with it.
Yeah, definitely. So if there's somebody like in your area in the Fresno, California area, um, would you let them know like which hospital you went to and if you would recommend it?
I did end up at Fresno Community. Um, they do have the lowest C-section rates in Fresno. So I think that's why the nurses were very supportive of it. The doctor who was there when I gave birth was totally supportive of it. Um, in fact, it was so crazy because she gave the pros and cons to a VBAC and a C-section. And a lot of the time when I would talk to like medical professionals, like nurses or doctors, they will only talk about the benefits of a C-section. They won't talk about the risks of it because there are risks to repeat C-sections. But she like let me know the risks to both options. So that was kind of cool of her because like I said, I had never heard that from a medical professional before. Just for them to even acknowledge it, like, yes, there is a risk in the repeat C-section. It's not just like the safest option because I've had 2 previous C-sections.
Absolutely. Any tips that you would like to give somebody who is trying for a VBAC?
Like I said, the education is super important because I did have a lot of pushback with the nurses that I would meet with at my OB office. Um, Relaxing the entire time, your entire pregnancy, just enjoying it was a huge part of it. Um, and then also, I am so thankful to have had doula support because I mean, you were there for like not just me, but for my husband, for my mom who was freaked out during my birth. Um, but yeah, you were there for like everybody around, and that was just so helpful to keep like the calmness, the calm energy in the room. So I highly, highly recommend hiring a doula for sure if you're trying for a VBAC.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's more that us as doulas do than people realize. And obviously, every doula probably practices a little bit differently, but I think it is important to talk to your doula if you are going to hire a doula beforehand and ask very specific questions like, how will you support me? Are you going to help support my partner? How will you try to facilitate our relationship or, him being included in the birth? And if it's a home birth, like, what does that look like? What do you have to offer? And just like every single scenario you can think about so that you find somebody that aligns with your views and beliefs.
Yeah, definitely. As somebody who you're comfortable with, like I said, I was so glad I had you as my doula because I was already comfortable with you.
Hmm.
Um, Rather than going for like a cheaper option or like, just somebody who you find that you're comfortable with, who you vibe with, who, like you said, like ask those questions on like how they plan on supporting your birth to see if it aligns with what you want. Those are, I mean, yeah, all huge things when hiring a doula. And it makes such a huge difference. Such a huge difference. Even my husband was just like so impressed by you, and he had no idea what a doula even did.
I love it. And to me, honestly, I'm just gonna throw a little thing in there. Like for me, being able to see you guys together and the way that he supported you throughout your entire labor, I was just like so impressed by him too, because he was just so loving and so like giving and just was there for you no matter what. So that was so sweet.
Yeah, that's also I think a super huge thing for having a VBAC is make sure your partner's on board because I had told him ahead of time, like there might be a point that I reach where I want to go to the hospital. Please talk me out of it. And so there was a time once I think possibly I had said I want to go to the hospital and he talked to me. He's like you're almost there. Like we're, just maybe a couple more hours probably. Like they already said you're progressing really great. So he was so supportive of what I asked him to do for me, which I was so thankful for. Yeah, he was extremely supportive and also got educated with me. He took a birth course with me online. That was so important. So he was kind of knew what was going on and was really, really supportive of it.
I love it so much. Oh my gosh. So I would love to be able to let people get in touch with you because you do, for the time being, offer placenta encapsulation. I know you're going to offer more later, but we don't have to talk about that
Possibly
if you don't
more.
want to. But where can people find you if they'd like to just talk to you about having a VBAC or if they would like placenta encapsulation in Fresno?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at blissful encapsulation, and then my website is blissfulencapsulation.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. And like I said, I'm so honored that I was able to be present at that birth because, oh my gosh, it just fills my heart with so much joy. Like, oh, you're so incredible. Watching like women in their strength and power birth their babies when people say they can't is just on a whole other level.
Yeah, I was so grateful to have you there. It was so amazing. Such a great experience.
Well, thank you. Thank you for choosing me.
Oh my God, of course.
All right. Well, we will end here. And thank you so much for listening to Sarah's story. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the VBAC Junkie podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show so that you don't miss an episode. And also, I have a free gift for you. If you would like to have a guide on how to prepare for a VBAC, head to my website at www.birthingcometrue.com/VBAC guide. And all of this will be in the show notes. So you can just click that link and head there and download this free guide. I hope you have an amazing week. Until next time, bye.